Chapter 10. Stanley had no trouble falling asleep, but morning came much too quickly. Every muscle and joint in his body ached as he tried to get out of bed. He didn't think it was possible, but his body hurt more than it had the day before. It wasn't just his arms and back, but his legs, ankles, and waist also hurt. The only thing that got him out of bed was knowing that every second he wasted meant he was 1 second closer to the rising sun. He hated the sun. He could hardly fit a spoon during breakfast, and then he was out onto the lake, his spoon replaced by a shovel. He found a crack in the ground and began his second hole. He stepped on the shovel blade, pushed it on the very back of the shaft with his base of his thumb. This hurt less than trying to hold the shaft with his blistered fingers. As he dug, he was careful to dump the dirt far away from the hole. He needed to save the area around the hole when the hole was much deeper. He didn't know if he ever get that far. X-ray was right. The second hole was the hardest. It would take a miracle as long as the sun wasn't out yet. He removed his cap, used it to protect his hands. Once the sun rose, he would have to put it back on his head. His neck and his forehead had been badly burned the day before. He took it one shovelful at a time and tried not to think about the awesome task that lay ahead of him. After another hour or so, his sore muscles seemed to loosen up a bit. He grunted as he tried to stick a shovel into the dirt. His cap slipped from under his fingers and the shovel fell free. He let it lie there. He took a drink from his canteen. He guessed that the water truck should be coming soon, but he didn't finish all the water, just in case he was wrong. He learned to wait until he saw the top rock before drinking the last drop. The sun wasn't yet up, but its ray arced the horizon and brought light to the sky. He reached down to pick up his cap, and there, next to it, saw a wide, flat rock. As he put his cap on the head, he continued to look down at the rock. He picked it up. He thought he could see the shape of a fish fossilized in it. He rubbed some off dirt, and the outline of the fish became clearer. The sun peeked over the horizon, and he could actually see tiny lines where every fish bones had been. He looked at barren and landed all around him. True, everyone referred to this area as the lake, but it was still hard to believe that dry wasteland was once full of water. Then he remembered Mr. Sir and Mr. Pendeski's both said if he dug up something interesting, he should report it to one of them. If the warden liked it, he could get the rest of the day off. He looked back at his fish. He found his miracle. He continued to dig through very slowly as he waited for the water truck. He didn't want to bring attention to his find. Afraid that one of the other boys might try and take it from him, he tossed the rock face down beside a dirt pile, as if it had no special value. A short while later, he saw the cloud of dirt heading across the lake. The truck stopped and the boys lined up. They always lined up in the same order. Stanley realized no matter who got there first, X-ray was always in front of the line. That came armpit, squid, zigzag, magnet, and Zero. Stanley got in line behind Zero, who was glad to be at the back so no one would notice the fossil. His pants was very large, but the rock was still made of bludge. Mr. Pendeski filled every boy's canteen until Stanley was the only one left. I found something, Stanley said, taking it out of his pocket. Mr. Pendeski reached out for Stanley's canteen, but handed him the rock instead. What's this? It's a fossil. See the fish? Mr. Pendeski looked at it again. See, you can even see all of its bone. Interesting. Let me have your canteen. Stanley handed it to him. Mr. Pendeski folded, then returned it. So, do I get the rest of the day off? What for? You said if I found something interesting, the warden would give me the day off. Mr. Pendersky laughed as he gave the fossil back to Stanley. Sorry, Stanley, the warden isn't interested in fossils. Let me see that, said Magnet, taking the rock from Stanley. Stanley continued to stare at Mr. Pendersky. Hey, Zig, dig this rock. Cool, said Zigzag. Stanley saw his fossil being passed around. I don't see it, nothing, said X-Ray. He took off his glasses to wipe them on his dirty clothes and put them back on. See, look at the little fishy. Stanley returned to his hole. Chapter 11. It wasn't fair. Mr. Pendersky had even said his fossil was interesting. He slammed his shovel into the ground and pried up another piece of earth. After a while, he noticed X-Ray and come out was watching him dig. Hey, caveman, let me talk to you for a second, X-Ray said. Stanley put his shovel and stepped out of his hole. Say, listen, if you find something else, give it to me, okay? Stanley wasn't sure what to say. X-Ray was clearly the leader of the group, and Stanley didn't want to get in the bad side. You're new here, right? I've been here for almost a year. I never found anything. My eyesight's not so good. No one knows this, but you know why my name is X-Ray? Stanley shrugged one shoulder. It's Pig for Rex. That's all. I'm too blind to find anything. Stanley tried to remember how Pig Latin worked. X-Ray went on. Why should you get a day off when you've only been here for a couple of days? If anybody gets a day off, it should be me. That's only fair, right? I guess, Stanley agreed. X-Ray smiled. You're a good guy, caveman. Stanley picked up his shovel. The more he thought about it, the more he was glad that he agreed to let X-Ray have anything he might find. If he was going to survive Camp Green Lake, it was far more important than X-Ray thinking he was a good guy than it was for him to get one day off. Besides, he didn't expect him to find anything out there. And even if there was, he never been what you could call lucky. He slammed his blade into the ground and then dumped out another shovel full of dirt. It was a little surprising when he thought X-Ray that was the leader of the group, since he obviously wasn't the biggest or the toughest. In fact, except for Zero, X-Ray was the smallest. Armpit was the biggest. Zigzag may have been taller than Armpit, but that was only because of his neck. Yet Armpit and all the others seemed to be willing to do whatever X-Ray asked them. As Stanley dug up another shovelful of dirt, it occurred to him that Armpit wasn't the biggest. He, the caveman, was bigger. He was glad that they called him caveman. It meant they accepted him as a member of the group. He would have been glad even if they called him a barf bag. It was really quite remarkable of him. At school, bullies like Derek Dune used to pick on him. Yet Derek Dune would be scared and senseless of any of the boys here. As he dug his hole, Stanley thought about what it would be like Derek Dune had to fight Armpit or Squid. Derek wouldn't stand a chance. He imagined what it would be like if he became good friends with all of them, and then for some reason they all went with him to school, and then Derek Dune tried to steal his notebook. Just what do you think you're doing? Asked Squid as he slammed his hand into Derek Dune's smug face. Cavemen's our friends, says Armpit, grabbing him by the shirt collar. Stanley played the scene over and over again in his mind. Each time he was watching another boy from Group D beat of Derek Dune. It felt him dig his hole ease his own suffering. Whether pain he felt was being 10 times worse by Derek. Chapter 12. Again, Stanley was the last one to finish digging. It was late afternoon when he dragged himself back to the compound. This time he would have been accepted a ride on the truck if it was offered. When he got to the tent, he found Mr. Pendeski and the other boys sitting in a circle on the ground. "Welcome, Stanley," said Mr. Pendeski. "Hey, caveman, did you get your hole dug?" asked Magnet. He managed to nod. "You spit in it?" asked Squid. He nodded again. "You're right," he said to X-Ray. "The second hole is the hardest." X-Ray shook his head. "The third hole's the hardest," he said. "Come and join our circle," said Mr. Pendeski. Stanley plopped down between Squid and Magnet. He needed to rest up before taking a shower. "We've been discussing what we want to do with our lives," said Mr. Pendeski. "We're not going to be at Camp Green Lake forever. We need to prepare for the day we leave here and join the rest of the society." "Hey, that's great, Mom," said Magnet. "They're going to finally let us out of here." The other boys laughed. "Okay, Joes," said Mr. Pendeski. "What do you want to do with your life?" "I don't know." "You need to think about that," said Mr. Pendeski. "It's important to have goals. Otherwise, you're going to end up right back in jail." "What do you like to do?" "I don't know," said Magnet. "You must like something," said Mr. Pendeski. "I like animals." "Good," said Mr. Pendeski. "Does anyone know about a job that involves animals?" Vegetarian. "That's right," said Mr. Pendeski. "He could work in a zoo." "He belongs in the zoo," said Squid, and he and X-Ray laughed. "How about you, Stanley? Any ideas for Joe's?" Stanley sighed. "Animal trainer?" he said. "Like for circuses or a movie or something like that?" "Any of those sounds good to you, Joe's?" asked Mr. Pendeski. "I like what Caveman said, training animals for movies. It'll be fun to train monkeys." X-Ray laughed. "Don't laugh, Rex," said Mr. Pendeski. "We don't laugh at people's dreams. Someone is going to have to train monkeys for the movies." "Who are you kidding, Mom? Magnet's never going to be a monkey trainer." "You don't know that," said Mr. Pendeski. "I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Nothing in life is easy. But that's no reason to give up. You should be surprised when you can accomplish if you set your mind to it. After all, you only have one life, so you should try and make the most of it." Stanley tried to figure out what he'd say if Mr. Pendeski asked him what he'd do with his life. He wanted to think of something to work with the FBI, but this didn't seem to an appropriate place to mention that. "So far, you've all done pretty good jobs at messing up your lives," said Mr. Pendeski. "I know you think you're cool." He asked Stanley, "So you're a caveman now, huh? You like digging holes, Caveman?" Stanley didn't know what to say. "Well, let me tell you something, Caveman. You are here on account of one person. If it wasn't for that person, you wouldn't be here for digging in the hot sun. You know who that person is? My no good, dirty, rotten, pig stealing great-great-grandfather?" The other boys howled with laughter. Even Zero smiled. It was the first time Stanley had ever seen Zero smile. He usually had such an angry expression on his face. Now he had such a huge smile. It seemed too big for his face, like the smile on a jack-o'-lantern. "No," said Mr. Pendeski. That person is you, Stanley. You're the reason you're here, and you're responsible for yourself. You messed up your life, and you're up to fix it. No one else is going to do for you, for any of you. No one else is going to do it for you, for any of you." Mr. Pendeski looked from one boy to another. "You're all going to do it. You are all special in your own way. We've all got something to offer. You have to think about what you want to do. Then do it. Even you, Zero. You're not completely worthless." The smile was now gone from Zero's face. "What do you want to do with your life?" said Mr. Peneskly asked him. Zero's mouth was shut tight. He glared at Mr. Peneskly. His dark eyes seemed to expand. "What about it, Zero?" asked Mr. Peneskly. "What do you like to do?" "I like to dig holes." All too soon, Stanley was back on the lake, sticking his shovel in the dirt. Chapter 13. X-Ray was right. The third hole was the hardest. So was the fourth hole, and the fifth hole, and the sixth hole, and He dug his shovel into the dirt. After a while, he lost track of the day of the week and how many holes he dug. It all seemed like one big hole, and it will take a year and a half to dig it. He guessed he lost at least 5 pounds. He figured that in 1 year he'd be either in a great physical condition or else dead. He dug his shovel into the dirt. He couldn't always be this hot. He thought surely it got cooler in December. Maybe then they froze. He dug his shovel into the dirt. His skin has gotten tougher. It didn't hurt so much to hold the shovel. As he drank from his canteen, he looked up at the sky. A cloud had appeared earlier in the day. It was the first cloud he could remember seeing since coming to Camp Green Lake. He could see the other boys were watching it all day, hoping it would move in front of the sun. Occasionally, it got close, but it was just teasing them. This hole was waist deep. He dug his shovel into the dirt. As he dumped it out, he thought he saw something glisten and fell into the dirt pile. Whatever it was quickly buried. Stanley stared at the pile for a moment, unsure if he'd seen it. Even if it was something, what good it would be to him? He promised he'd give anything he found to X-Ray. It didn't seem to worth enough to climb out of his hole and check it out. He glanced up at the cloud, which was close enough to the sun. He had to squint to look at it. He dug his shovel back into the earth, scooped up some more dirt, and lifted it over. But instead of dumping it there, he tossed it over to the side. His curiosity had gotten the better of him. He climbed out of his hole and dipped his fingers through the pile. He felt something hard and metallic. He pulled it out. It was a gold tube, as long as wide as a second finger on his right hand. The tube was open at one end and closed at the other. He used a few drops of precious water to clean it. There seemed to be some kind of design on the flat, closed end. He poured a few more drops of water on it and rubbed the inside of his pockets. He looked again in the design engraved into the flat bottom of the tube. He could see an outline of a heart with the letter KB attached on it. He tried to figure out some way he wouldn't have to given it to X-Ray. He could just keep it, but that would do him any good. He wanted a day off. He looked at large piles of dirt where X-Ray was digging. X-Ray pump was almost probably finished for the day. Getting the rest of the day off would hardly do him much good. X-Ray would have first to show him the tube to Mr. Sir or Mr. Peneskly, who would have then shown it to the warden. By then, X-Ray might have been done anyway. Stanley wondered about trying to secretly take the tube directly to the warden. He could explain the situation to the warden, and the warden might make up an excuse to give him a day off, so X-Ray didn't suspect. He looked across the lake towards the cabin under the 2 oak trees. The place scared him. He had been at Camp Green Lake for almost 2 weeks, and he still hadn't seen the warden. That was just as well. If he could go his entire year and a half without seeing the warden, that would be fine with him. Besides, he didn't know what if the warden would find the tube interesting. He looked at it again. It looked familiar. thought he'd seen something like it somewhere before, but couldn't quite find a place. What you got there, caveman? Asked Zigzag. Stanley's large hand closed around the tube. Nothing, just, it was useless. I think it might have found something. Another fossil? No, I'm not sure what it was. Let me see it. Zigzag. Instead of showing it to Zigzag, Stanley brought it to X-Ray. Zigzag followed. X-Ray looked at the tube, then rubbed it on his dirty glasses and his dirty shirt and looked at the tube again. One by one, the other boys dropped their shovels and came to look. It looks like an old shotgun shell. Yeah, that's probably what it is, said Stanley. Decided not to mention the engraved design, but nobody noticed it. He doubted X-Ray could see it. No, it's too long and thin to be a shotgun shell, said Magnet. It's probably just a piece of junk. Well, let's show it to Mom, said X-Ray. See what he thinks. Who knows? Maybe I'll get the day off. Your hole's almost finished, said Stanley. Yeah, so? Stanley raised and lowered his shovel. So why not wait until tomorrow to show Mom? He suggested. You can pretend it you found the first thing in the morning and you can get the whole day off instead of just an hour or so in this afternoon. X-Ray smiled. Good thinking, caveman. He dropped the tube into his large pocket on the left leg of his dirty orange pants. Stanley returned to his hole. When the water truck came, Stanley started to take his place at the end of the line, but X-Ray told him to get behind Magnet in front of Zero. Stanley moved one up place in the line. That night, as Stanley lay on a scratchy and smelly cot, he tried to figure out what he could have done differently, but there was nothing he could do. For once, his unlucky life, he was in the right place at the right time, and he still didn't help him. Chapter 14. You've got it? He asked X-Ray the next thing at break. X-Ray looked at him with half-open eyes behind his dirty glasses. I don't know what you're talking about, he grumbled. You know, said Stanley. No, I don't know, X-Ray snapped. So just leave me alone, okay? I don't want to talk to you. Stanley didn't say another word. Mr. Stern marched the boys out to the lake, chewing sunflower seeds along the way and spitting out the shells. He scraped the ground with his boot heel to mark each boy was supposed to dig. Stanley stamped down on the back of the blade and the shovel, piercing the hard, dry earth. He couldn't figure out why X-Ray snapped him. If he wasn't going to produce the tube, why did he make sure Stanley give it to him? Was he just going to keep it? The tube was gold in color, but Stanley didn't think it was real gold. The water truck came a little after sunrise. Stanley finished his last drop of water and stepped out of his hole. At this time of day, Stanley sometimes could see the distant hills or mountain on the other side of the lake. They were only visible for a short while and would soon disappear behind the haze of the heat and dirt. The truck stopped and dirt could drift past it. X-Ray took his place and Mr. Pendersky filled his canteen. Thanks, Mom, said X-Ray. He didn't mention the tube. Mr. Pendersky filled all the canteens, then climbed back into the cab of the pickup. He still had to bring water to Group E. Stanley could see them digging about 200 yards away. Mr. Pendersky! X-Ray shouted from his hole. Wait, Mr. Pendersky! I think I might have found something. The boys all followed Mr. Pendersky as he walked over to X-Ray's hole. Stanley could see the gold tube sticking out of dirt at X-Ray's shovel. Mr. Pendersky examined it and took a long look at his flat bottom. I think the warden is going to like this. Does it mean X-Rays just get to dig off? Just keep digging until someone says otherwise, said Mr. Pendersky. Then he smiled. But if I were you, Lex, I wouldn't be digging too hard. Stanley watched a cloud of dust move across the lake to the cabin behind the trees. The boys in Group E were just going to wait. It didn't take long for the pickup truck to return. Mr. Pandesky stepped out of the cab. The tall woman with red hair stepped out of the passenger side. She looked taller than she was since Stanley was down in his hole. She wore a black cowboy hat and black cowboy boots, which were studded in crystal stones. The sleeves on her shirt was rolled up, and her eyes were covered with freckles, and as was her face. She walked right up to X-ray. "This, where you found it?" "Yes, ma'am. Your good work will be rewarded." She turned to Mr. Pandesky. "Drive X-ray back to camp. Let him take a double shower and give him some clean clothes. But first, I want you to fill everyone's canteen." "I just filled them a little while ago," said Mr. Pandesky. The warden stared at him. "Excuse me?" she said. Her voice was soft. "I had just told them when Rex..." "Excuse me," the warden said again. "Did I ask when you last filled them?" "No, but it's just..." "Excuse me?" Mr. Pandesky stopped talking. The warden wiggled her fingers to come to her. "It's hot and it's only going to get hotter," she said. "Now these fine boys have been working hard. Don't you think it might be possible they can have another drink since you last filled their canteens?" Mr. Pandesky said nothing. The warden Stanley. "Caveman, will you come here, please?" Stanley was surprised she knew his name. He had never seen her. Until she stepped out of the truck, he didn't know the warden was a woman. He nervously went towards her. "Mr. Pandesky and I were having a discussion. Have you taken a drink since Mr. Pandesky had last filled your canteen?" Stanley didn't want to cause any trouble for Mr. Pandesky. "I got plenty left," he said. "Excuse me?" He stopped. "Yeah, I drank some." "Thank you. May I see your canteen, please?" Stanley handed it to her. Her fingernails were painted dark red. She gently shook the canteen, letting water swish from the plastic container. "Do you hear the empty spaces?" she asked. "Yes," said Mr. Pandesky. "Then fill it," she said. "And the next time I tell you to do something, I expect you to do it without questioning my authority. If that's too much trouble for you to fill a canteen, I'll give you a shovel. You can dig the hole and Caveman can fill your canteen." She turned back to Stanley. "I don't think that would be much trouble for you, would it?" "No," said Stanley. "So what will it be?" she asked Mr. Pandesky. "Do you want to fill the canteens or do you want to dig?" "I'll fill the canteens," said Mr. Pandesky. "Thank you." Chapter 15. This is the end of this video. Bye!